Hello, 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 and welcome to My Empty Hands, a podcast about the martial arts with a focus on Kempo. As always, I am Reggie Darden, and I'm excited to have another great guest with me today, Mr. Gary Wilson. And we are going to talk some Kempo, talk some martial arts, talk about his journey in the martial arts and in Kempo, and whatever other items that we want to talk about. We're gonna get into that as well. Um, I'm really excited because he's in uh, from my old stopping grounds in Southern California, and uh, so it's I'm gonna get to kind of relive some of those good old days in Southern California. So excited about that, and but yeah, I usually kind of go through and kind of go through my background, but we're here for the guests, so I'm gonna turn it over to Mr. Wilson here, and just go ahead and fill me in on how Kempo found you, how the martial arts found you, and where did it all start for you, and we'll kind of go from there, and I'll throw in my little tidbits as needed. So yeah, take it away.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks for having me on. Appreciate that. Always like to talk Kempo. I started actually as well. It's funny going back as a kid. I was born in California, and my parents moved back to Michigan, where they were from, South Lansing, which was a really rough neighborhood. So growing up, needless to say, I fought going to school and I fought coming home from school. Little kind of gangbanger things, but it was more neighborhood kids, and my cousins lived across the street. So I had my cousins, my brother, and me. He's my older brother, and then a couple of the kids down the street. So we all stuck together, and every day was fighting, going to school, fighting, coming home from school. And that's where I learned that I really enjoyed fighting, and that was my thing back then. I liked hitting and I liked getting hit. So they both worked for me. And then we moved to California, back to California in '69, and mid-year. So me and my brother both had to kind of fight our way through school once again because we were the new kid on the block and everybody was testing us. And they found out that we fight a little bit better from Michigan than what they were fighting at the time because we were used to it. So I always liked the martial arts, watching Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris and all those guys. So that was my big interest. It was really something that I wanted to do. And my parents, I don't know how old I was, but I was pretty young. Me and my brother both. My dad knew a guy that was working with him that was, I think, training to be a cop, and he was taking taekwondo lessons out of a guy's garage. I don't know what belt rank he was or anything, but we went over there and we checked it out, and we both liked it. And I remember it was $35 a month for each one of us, and my parents could afford one, but not both. So if we both couldn't do it, neither one got to do it. So later in life, when I think I was around 22, 23, 19, January 1986, whatever I was back then, married, and I was bored. I didn't have any kids at the time, and at the time I had the money then, and I was bored, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to take karate. I've always wanted to do that. So I looked up in the yellow pages, started flipping through it, and here in Lemon Grove, San Diego, California, Lemon Grove is where I lived, and there was a karate school right in the middle of town that said Ed Parker's Kempo Karate, which, unfortunately, at the time, I'm thinking Ed Parker's Kempo Karate. I'm thinking it should be some kind of Oriental name, some Chinese or Japanese name. So I'm thinking, I don't know if I really want to take karate from some guy named Ed Parker. So I thought, what the heck? It's close. It's like a mile away. And so I called up and made an appointment. They did 5 introductory lessons at the time, and I think that's what Parker was doing too. And I went down there and didn't really know who Ed Parker was or anything else. I got lucky, so ended up being the right choice. I took the introductory lesson, had a blast, went back for the second one, the third one, and, the fifth one, that was the hook, hook, line, and sinker. They got me because it was in my blood. I was like, I love this stuff. So, and the one instructor, Stephen Hage, that was teaching me, um, on the, I think it was the second lesson, he taught me lone kimono. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to teach you, you're doing so good." I'm sure that was just a thing to plead hey, make you feel good. So I'm gonna teach you an orange belt technique. So he taught me lone kimono, and I went home bragging it up. I said, "Yeah, I'm so good. I got this orange belt technique," and I was pumped. And so went back on the fifth lesson, signed up for lessons, started training, and at purple belt, the instructor there at the school, my instructor, Mr. Darby Darrow, um, best instructor I've ever had. Awesome, awesome instructor. He was becoming a San Diego police officer at the time, and, there's nothing that guy couldn't do. He, uh, trained from the Gracies for a while, and Helson Gracie said, he goes, "I teach this guy something one time, and he's got it." I had to work a little bit harder at it, but once I got to purple belt, uh Mr. Darrow really liked, what I was doing, so he had me start teaching classes, and that was it. I was down there every single day of the week. I was down there when the school opened, I was there when it closed, and if he was there on a Sunday, which sometimes he was, because 'cause he'd bring the cops in once things got going and they would do different, drills and stuff, I'd jump in with that and work with them, and so it was right around purple, blue. He also said he wanted to start teaching me private lessons, so I was the only one that I know of that he was giving private lessons to at the time. So every Wednesday, I was invited to the advanced class, and, every Wednesday, he'd give me an hour private, and then we'd go into the advanced class from there, and, um he was just phenomenal as an instructor. All the instructors I've had over the years have been great instructors, but he was just a guy that could really teach you, how to move, how to do it. Any problems you had, he'd find out, he'd tell you this, do that, and just make things work. And it was funny, I think I was getting ready to test for my brown belt. Video tapes started coming out, and everybody had these video recorders that took the whole VHS tape. So he got one, and he said, "Everybody bring down a VHS tape." So I did, and he filmed me, and he was having me do upward blocks. And it's funny because I'm doing the upward blocks, and he's having me, as I'm doing more and more of them, pretty soon he's whispering in this tape, so I can't hear it, and he goes, "It looks like you're driving a truck." So he kept telling me, he goes, "As you were doing it faster, instead of doing an upward block, I was coming more this way, so it ended up looking like I'm steering this big, huge truck." And I went home and I plugged that tape in and I heard him, and he goes, "Looks like you're driving a truck." And I noticed it right away, and bam, fixed my upward blocks. It was like, yeah, hey, I saw it. And so, anyways, he was a phenomenal instructor. All the instructors that I had there were really good, instructors. I had one named Mark Wilhelm that, taught most of the adult classes, a young guy, and, just an awesome martial artist. He became a police officer too, and a lot of them, Darby and him both became full-time SWAT, and they did SWAT, and, Darby's retired now. I'm not sure if, um I think he still does some stuff with law enforcement, but he moved to Washington, and he's got a school down there, and, he built a big dojo in the back. I haven't had a chance to be out there to see it yet, but it's pretty cool. So from Darby, he took me up through basically 4th degree black belt, promoted me up through 2nd, but, the time frame that you needed in between each rank, I was there every day training. So, he said, "I'd promote you, but you don't have the time in, as far as, a year, 2 years." And, I did as far as on the mat because I was there all the time. I wasn't there 2 days a week. I was there 7 days a week. So, anyhow, he took me up through 2nd black, and then at 4th black, he was at Ed Parker's black belt too, so he's first generation. Um, he taught me everything, and he goes, You know what? We were already starting to do jujitsu. The Gracies had came here, like I said, started in '86. I got my black belt June 12th, 1993, and then Ed Parker, passed away in 1990, and that going back a little bit, that was December. Uh, I think December 5th he passed away, and then it came around to the internationals, first internationals without Ed Parker, and we were up there, and the Gracies had Helson Gracie, and I think it was Hickson that they'd set up a booth at the internationals and videotape. And they were showing the lions killing a lion, coming out and tackling another lion. And Darby was like, wow, this is perfect, because with the police department, they used to be able to do the chokeholds and all that stuff. So he said, a lot of the stuff that we do with Kempo, elbows and punching, police officers can't do that. But a lot of the grappling stuff they can do with the wrist locks and all the other stuff. So he started taking that and he started adding it into our system. So I did it for 7.5 years with Darby, not for belt rank. He was going for belt rank, but we were just doing it for fun. We did an hour jujitsu class every week. And I didn't enjoy it much. I don't really like grappling on the grounds like wrestling in high school and stuff. As a street fighter, I want to stay on my feet all the time. So that's always been for me. And that's why Ed Parker's system worked so well. In fact, my first night sparring when I got my yellow belt, I was told by the instructor, Mark Wilhelm, uh, we all started sparring and I'm just like going in full blast, I kept going, it's like I don't back up. And that's the way I learned to street fight. Once my mom always said, my dad is, you don't start a fight, but if somebody throws a punch, you finish it. And you better win. So,
Yeah.
I was full blast when I go. Once I start going straight, I just keep going, until somebody falls down or something. And he goes, back off, don't be so aggressive, So I had to work on it a little bit and kind of learn the sparring, moving in and then moving back and moving to the side and not just going just full blast, into whatever it takes. I didn't care if once I went in and if somebody was hitting me, I just kept going. It's like, I'm going to get my shot in there. And so that was a big eye opener there. And then so we did the jujitsu and we did Kempo also. So we were doing both of them. And Parker had passed away, so some things started changing at the dojo. We were still teaching the Parker system. It was a 24 technique system, and I learned all of it up, like I said, up through fourth black, or up through third, I guess, was the highest everything went.
Mhm.
Um, and along with that, while I was doing that, I dabbled in. I did Aikido for about a year, but that wasn't really for me. I just wanted to try everything, kind of see how it fit and you know, what works. And there was a lot of applications I could put into the Kempo that worked too. So I did that. I did Muay Thai for 6, 7 months. Didn't really care for the Muay Thai either. I liked the fighting, but it just wasn't, my style for me, and I stuck
Mhm.
with Kempo, did the jiu-jitsu. I started going over some schools and I'd spar with them. Some guys had Taekwondo schools and I'd share some Kempo, they'd share some Taekwondo. I'd be like, okay, our hands are faster, but your feet are, they got better kicks. So
Yeah.
yeah, hey,
Yeah.
teach me your kick. I'll teach you some striking or some jiu-jitsu. And I did that at a Taekwondo school too. And I did a little bit of everything, worked with the Eskrima sticks, arnés, um, pressure points. My latest thing was pressure points, but Darby, as we got going, I wanted to open up a school. I decided, hey, this is for me. I'm here all the time. So I talked to Darby about it, and at that time they were getting ready to close down the school in Lemon Grove because it was just financially I wasn't making any money or anything. And there was another person involved in there that I didn't really see eye to eye with, so it wasn't really working out. So I went and opened up another school and just from scratch. And I didn't tell any students I was going. I just bowed out one day, went over and opened up a school. One of the guys went with me and opened it up at the beginning with me. and we had 840 square feet. It was a little place, and there was a couple walls in between. And when I showed it to him, Tom Ahrensberg, he looked at it and he goes, "Gary, this isn't big enough for a karate school. Each room's like 10 foot by 20. I ain't gonna work." And I said, "No, I'm knocking these walls out," and I had the whole idea, and he goes, "Okay, we'll go for it. I trust you, whatever you do." So we knocked it all down and built a little office, a little dressing room, and it worked. And we did that for about 2.5 years, and then the school grew, and I got offered to go into a school. It was 2,000 square feet down the street with a really good price. So we moved down there, and I did that for I think about 17 years down there. And they started raising the rent, doubling it, tripling it to the point of just made it to where I couldn't afford it. The place next door was a funeral parlor, so we had a pretty good
Hmm.
setup. We knock them out, take them next door, no. But, they started doing a lot of gangbanger funerals and stuff, and it brought a lot of, bad blood into the neighborhood. So
Mhm.
I had a lot of parents and people that didn't wanna really train there anymore because they were scared to come. I was walking them out to their cars. One night, one of the parents came in and said there was 2 rivalry gangs that were out there, and they're getting ready to fight. There's, like, 15 of each gang, they're getting ready to go at it. And I'm not thinking anything. I'm just thinking protect my school, my family, my students are my family, and so I go running out the door. I go out there. I'm like, "Hey, what's going on? Break it up." And I get in the middle, and they're all looking at me really weird like, and they all kind of back up and stuff. And I got it broke up, and then I turn around, I start walking back into the dojo, and I realize I'm wearing my karate gi, my belt, and everything else, and it's like these guys could have guns, knives, whatever. But after that, it just the studio dropped off. I had 166 students at the peak, and we dropped down to, like, 45 students. I'm like, "I can't afford it anymore." The rent was skyrocketing, like $4,500, $5,000 a month. It was more money going out of my pocket than it was. So my last resort, I found a place here in Spring Valley at 1,340 square feet, I think it is. Perfect little school. It's nice.
Mhm.
And, the owner was really cool, and, in between that, I kinda go back a little bit, miss him, was, so Darby, when he closed down the school, I started training under Willie Steele. He wanted me to start working out with him, so, Willie Steele was first generation Ed Parker black belt too, and he passed away a couple of years ago, um, and he was with me for quite a while. He took me from actually promoted me to 3rd all the way up through 7th degree black, and he was under Dave Hebler, Grandmaster senior Grandmaster Dave Hebler at the time, and, which is I don't know if you know who he is, but,
Tell you, yeah.
yeah, Dave's highest rank in black belt besides Chuck Sullivan, I believe right now that's still alive, um, under Ed Parker. So, anyways, he, at the same time he was around 96. I met, Grandmaster Dave Hebler, and, he's like, "Hey, you gotta come train with me and work out with us," and Willie was already up there working out with him, and so I joined the association that was at that time, it was the original American Kempo Karate Association, and, uh, and he acknowledged me into I was 2nd degree black as far as my rank. I had the material, but that was my rank at the time, so he acknowledged me into the system as 2nd degree black belt, and then I had the grand opening, and I was doing some privates with him up in Hemet, and working with, Willie Steele at the same time, and then, when I opened up my school, he came for my grand opening, and it was really funny because he told me I'd passed flyers out everywhere. I walked out like 2,000 flyers. I'm like, "I'm gonna do this." And, well, I didn't have much money. I had enough just to get the school opened. I borrowed a little bit from mother-in-law and got it opened, and so I passed out these flyers, and the day that we were doing the, grand opening, he brought down the whole association. Everybody came in. There was a whole bunch of guys, and they all supported me, and he said, "Don't expect to sign anybody up on your grand opening. It just doesn't happen. You're here just to kinda celebrate the opening of your school." and people started coming in, they wanted to sign up for classes, and I'm like, "Wow," and Dave's just like, "I can't believe you're signing people up." So I had a line going in my door. In my office, you could only go in through the the front door into the office. My desk was wall to wall because it was so small. That's how I had to build it. And so Dave kept going, hurry up," and I'm going through, I don't know how to sign anybody up at this point, I'm like, "Okay, it's this much a month for lessons, and it's this much for the uniform, and it's this much for this, and this much for the association," all these, like, I'm dinging them for all these little things, but they're signing up. And he, after that was all over, he pulls me about halfway through, pulled me out and acknowledged me and kicked me for second-degree black belt in the association. And then he pulled me aside and he goes, "I gotta teach you something about signing people up." He goes, "You put it together as a package. You get all this stuff. This is how much it is, and this is how much it is per month." And he says, "Just shut up and then just ask them how they wanna pay." And, man, that took all the hard work out of spending an hour trying to, I'm telling everybody about every single thing there is, and, simplified things. So, really smart businessman. And so, from there, I was in the association, and then he made me, something in the association, I can't remember what it was, but he gave me some kind of a director title and, organizer or something. And then that association closed down, and I went up in rank, and we moved to the other school, and, at a certain point, let me see, what happened? I actually, Willie Steele was moving to Alabama, and, so Grandmaster Hebler took me on as his student at that point, and I had went to Tennessee, and I was around doing seminars all over the place. There was a year I was just, I don't know, from state to state to state, just doing workshops and seminars everywhere. And I came back and I was really kind of bummed. I'd done one at a Kempo school and I wasn't real impressed with what everybody was doing. And I also did a couple taekwondo schools, and I'm like, "These guys are moving really well, their kicks look really good, everything's sharp, but they don't really have as much," and in Kempo, 24 techniques per belt, I mean, it's a lot. And I had
Yeah.
already broke the system down a little bit to 16 techniques per belt because I really wanted the quality. I didn't want everybody spending so much time on so many techniques. I wanted their basics to be really good, and I'd gone over it with, Willie Steele when we started that, and he agreed. He was still kinda, "Ed Parker, 24 techniques is the way you do it," but I said, "You know what?" I said, "I really believe 16 techniques, web of knowledge, everything." I tried to follow everything, put everything in order that way, teach only the basics that are in yellow belt, only the orange belt basics, and kinda maneuvered a little bit that way, which worked really well, but it's still, I'm a real stickler on the basics, so I want things to be perfect, and, it still took a long time. My first yellow belt, my first school took a year and a half to get him there, and the guy was coming 3 days a week, and
Mm.
he was like, "Oh my god, this just takes forever to get anywhere,"
Mhm.
and then that's where okay, I gotta lighten up on it a little bit. They're not gonna be black belts at yellow belt, and, he was a really good yellow belt, him and his wife. So, we stuck with the 16 technique system, which worked really good that we put together. And then when I went to the bigger school, after I came back from that workshop, I thought about it on the plane and I thought, you know what? I just think that there's too much material as far as I'm a street fighter and self defense. And I wanted to train people to be able to protect themselves out on the street. Not much of a forms guy. Forms are necessary. I mean, there's a lot that you learn and you get out of the principles and concepts and movement with forms. So I'm not saying that you don't need forms, but my thing is really the fighting, and it always been sparring, competing. I refereed at the internationals, and I tried to do everything I could, throughout the years. So when I came back, Grandmaster Hebler had actually left and went to Thailand, and he was doing a movie, and that was, Joe Louis was actually in that movie. He'd gotten brain cancer, and it was, one of the last things I think he did, and, so Grandmaster Hebler was working on that movie. Before he got there, he was choreographing fight scenes and stuff. It was called White Tiger. It never came out. I guess there was maybe a financial movies always, they get to a
Mhm.
certain point, they either make it or don't. And so, he got a hold of me and he said, "Hey, I need a place to stay, you got any ideas?" And I'm like, "I don't have room in my house," but I said, "I got a motorhome parked outside that you can stay in for about 3 months till we start doing some traveling." And he said, "Hey, that's good enough." And so he sent me his plane arrangements. I went and picked him up at the airport, brought him back. He lived here with me in the motorhome for about 3 months. And then he moved in with Tom here and stayed in San Diego, so I had him pretty close by for a while. I got to do a lot of stuff. So while he was here, I came back from doing the workshops, and he told me, "Say, Gary," and I said, "Let me come in." He goes, "How did it go?" And I said, "Well, let me grab a beer and I'll be out there." He said, "Okay." So we sat down and I gave him beer and I said, I got to talk to you about something. And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "You know what?" I said, "I'm pretty straightforward on things." I said, "You are too." So I said, "I'm going to tell you something that I have an idea for. If you don't like it, punch me in the face. And he goes, "Okay, I will." And he would have. So I sat there and I told him, I said, "I think I need to put together a system. Today's environment, I just don't see people coming in like when I was training. Nobody's doing it anymore. They come 2 days a week, maybe 3 if you got somebody that's really, really into it. But to get 24 techniques to do them the way I feel you should be doing them, um, it's gonna take me 50 years to get a black belt, out of somebody." So, I said I was at these schools, I told them what happened with the workshops, and I said, "I think the whole problem is I feel people gotta spend more time on the basics, and they gotta understand the technique, and I need to be able to break it down for them and make sure that they can move properly, and they got the balance, and they can generate the power, and they understand that power is coming from the hips, you gotta rotate your hips." I said, "That's how Parker moved," and so I said, I wanna put together a system that's got less techniques, and I had told him, I said, "I think, I can do it with 8 to 10 techniques." And, he took the beer and he slammed it on the table and beer went everywhere, and he's looking at me and I'm like, "Oh, he's pissed." And then he goes, "It's a great idea. I've always wanted to do that." So he goes, "Chuck did that, Chuck Sullivan." He goes, "He does video stuff, but he kind of the same thing. He's got, I think, 56 techniques." And he looked at me and he goes, "But you want too many techniques. You need to break it down more." So we broke it down and he came down with me and another instructor that I had that I trained with at Lemon Grove, awesome fighter, David Stewart, and he helped us. And me and Dave Stewart would pound out the techniques, and Hebler would watch, and he would say, "That's good, that's bad, let's do this, let's try that." And we changed some of the techniques and did little things and picked what techniques we thought in the family grouping and everything would work out with a smaller system, not as big. And that's kind of what we put together. And so we came up with 4.46. And what's funny is Jeff Speakman came up with 5.0 like right before that. And we were trying to we were going to do, um, uh, we were just gonna call it 4.46, and I said, "Well, we need to kinda add to that. He said, "Well, why don't you do original Kempo." At first, he said original American Kempo Karate Association. I said, Dave, that was your old association." He had sold that to Greg Townsley, so I said, "I can't use American." And I said, "We got some other stuff in there too, so let's just call it original Kempo Karate," because we were kinda taking it back to the basics of talking to him and Chuck Sullivan. I went up and met with him and Vic LaRue, and we talked, and they were like, "Yeah, you should do this." So I said, I kinda wanna take it back to the roots of Kempo because the guys back in the early '60s, late '50s, the old timers, they were hardcore. It was hardcore. It was good Kempo. It's not that it's not good now, but it's just putting the time in. They were like 2 years and they would make a black belt, and they'd be really good black belts, and they didn't have as many techniques, and then everything started 'cause it started, um, I believe, Dave and Chuck said that it was, white, yellow, brown, and black, and then they added in an orange, and then it kinda grew from there, and then it got too big, and then it got smaller, and Chuck Sullivan told me, he said, he had talked to to Ed Parker after he came back from doing Perfect Weapon. And Ed Parker said that he had to do something because he had been to a couple schools doing some workshops and tests, I think, and he just said, "I'm seeing the techniques, but I'm hearing the names, but I don't identify the techniques as what I'm really teaching." Because it was really, if you think about it, Pasadena, San Diego, we were close, so we were pretty much on key with it, but when it's back in all these other states, he's not spending as much time, and there's no videotapes, there's no video conferencing that you could do to work with anybody back then. So, and he really wanted people to take it and kinda move the way they moved, so a lot of things got changed. So, my thing was to try to keep it as good as I possibly could. So the 4.46, what it stood for is 4 forms up to black belt. From black belt, I add a lot more stuff into it, but just to get to black belt. My thing was to get somebody to black belt and be a quality black belt and to be able to defend himself out in the street, that I taught him something. And I really felt like at orange and purple, we were losing people because it was, and by that time, a lot of purple belts in Ed Park's system back in those days, they were better than some of the black belts that I was seeing in tournaments and stuff. Is because we were putting that much time into it to get to that point. So, um, I really wanted a, quality martial art. So, and something good. And the Parker system was just awesome. And it was like street fighting, what I learned up close and personal. And so we took the best that we could. We put together 46 techniques to black belt. Doesn't seem like much. I get students now telling me, it's like, God, there's so much material. And I'm like, this is like nothing. But the quality that I wanted at is different. So we do 4 forms and 46 techniques. And I put together this with Hebler, and we thought it was a great idea, but it didn't really work out real well over the years. I've changed it. Was we didn't do any of the traditional forms. We were having them work on their techniques more. So we had them take out their every technique they learned, they had to create their own form and do it right and left side. And that way I figured that they're working those techniques. They're getting better at their techniques because they're pounding them out in their forms. But it was confusing them right and left side at the beginning, and it didn't work out real good. So a few years later, I brought back in short form 1, long form 1. We do 2, and we do form 3, and then we do long form 4. And that's as far as we take it as far as with the forms. I think most everything that you really need, if you haven't got it out of it by that time, the other forms, they're good forms, but I don't really think that you're learning as much more as what you're gonna learn through those forms. And so we put those back in, and it's worked really, really well. And, so and with the kids, I do half ranks even, so they only learn 3 techniques, and then they test for a half yellow, but they have to learn all those basics that are in those techniques. And it doesn't seem like much, but if you take those first 3 techniques and you break down every single basic, that's quite a bit at the beginning to be learning to as far as basics. So yellow belt's still a very hard belt. And most people have agreed with me that, it's worked out really well. Anybody that's came in and sat on one of my tests, they're just like, "Wow, this is awesome. They're doing really good." So I've had really good, feedback on the system. So it's I think a really good system. And along with it, a few years ago, I started taking pressure points and training in Sistema with David Snyder, and that really opened my eyes to a lot of things as far as movement and the pressure points that were actually are in the Kempo system that you don't really see, and I really focus on that a little more. I try to make every student understand what they're doing, how they're doing it, and understand the fact that when somebody dummies for a technique, and it's funny, Grandmaster Ebler wanted to take that word away, but I can't think of anything else but dummy. And I say, you're like a stuntman in the movie. So I tell them, I say, when you get punched in the face, you're not going to stand there. I see this happen on black belts else all the time. They throw the attack and the guy stands there and he throws the punch. And I say, you know what? When the punch comes towards your face, lean back on your heels and see where you end up. Because if I punch you in the face, you're going to go back on your heels and you're going to take a step back. And that puts more reality into where they're going to end up. So we try to make it as realistic as we possibly can of what's really going to happen. I try to get them to understand a dummy, and when I say it's the I feel the importance of dummying for a technique is as important as the technique, because if you hit, you learn how to go with it. As you're dummying for that technique, you're learning how to move. Your body's moving. You'll be able to take that punch a lot better than just standing there and taking a full blown punch, across the jaw. And so that's kind of the way we do that, and we put it together. I got a smaller school now. I trained with the association, all those guys, when it was the original Kempo Karate Association, original American Kempo Karate Association up in Hemet. We all got together and pounded out techniques. And then eventually that kind of, he shut it down, and there was nothing for a while. And then he opened up the Gift of Power, he called it, another association. That one didn't go over real well. I joined that one too. And then uh, Trevor Sherman, another guy, wanted Dave to open an association again after he shut down the Gift of Power. And I'd told him for years, call it Dave Hebler's Kempo Karate Association, because everybody knows who you are, it's or most people. And so he did. Trevor, I think, talked him into doing that. And so as the association started growing, we got quite a few schools that were on board. And then he made me and Dave Prosser, a good friend of mine, and I was very lucky. I got to meet Dave Prosser. I don't know if you've heard Dave Prosser, uh, tremendous fighter. And so me and him are really, really good friends. He was the best man at my wedding, and he came down. I met him. That was when we acknowledged Dave as senior grandmaster at my school, and we had Paul Dye down there, and we got a few people too. Pretty big workshop. Frank Trejo, and um, I can't remember who all was there, but we had quite a few in attendance. And so he was acknowledged, and then when I moved or I was still in the school, we did the 446, and then Dave made me the president of his association. I had a lot of dreams for it. I wanted it to grow and get bigger, and Dave Prosser was vice president. AC Rainey was on board. Todd Durgan. Um, we had quite a few guys, and I did that for a few years. And then when I moved the school down here to Spring Valley, and I wanted to do other stuff with the association, Dave says, he goes, yeah, you should open up your own association. And I said, "Oh, what would I call it?" And he goes, "Well, call it Original American Kempo." I said, "Well, you can't, because you sold that." He goes, "Okay, call it Original Kempo Karate." So the same thing as, your title, we call it Original Kempo Karate 4.46. So I did, and I started my own association. I've had that for a few years now. The so the four forms, 4.46, 46 techniques up to get through black belt, plus all the basics and sets and everything else. It's still pretty good sized system. But what I was saying earlier with Jeff Speakman was he had started the 5.0 right before we called it 4.46, and I didn't think anything of it. And at the time, computer and software, everything was 1.0, 1.5, and I think that's kind of where we're like, hey, 4.46, yeah. And then I had people calling me, and they're like, so your system, Jeff Speakman's is an upgrade from your system? And I'm like, an upgrade? And I never even really put it together. I go, yeah, yours is 4.46, his is 5.0. So his is an upgrade from the 4.4. I said, no, they have nothing to do with anything whatsoever. Jeff has his system, and I got my system. 5.0 is what he calls it, and I call mine 4.46 because it forms in the sets. And so we moved into this school down here, and we've been training out of there for, God, I think about 8 years now, and that's been working out really good. And I got some other directions I'm trying to take, Kempo too. I really want. I've always had in my mind that I wanted Kempo to be the biggest system. It's like I just want to get the word out there, and it's an awesome system. Whether you're doing 24 techniques, you're doing 6 techniques per belt, 16. It really doesn't matter, the principles and the concepts and how it's taught and the basics. And, I really look at it, if Ed Parker was still alive, I'd be teaching whatever Ed Parker was teaching now. If it was 24 techniques, it'd be 24 I'd be sticking to whatever he's doing. But, things changed and I had a hard time with it changing for a long time. I read all the black belt magazines back when there was, an actual magazine you could physically open up, and I think they're doing it a little bit now again, I don't know, but um every single magazine after Parker died, I still have it, and there's an article in there. Oh, it's gonna fall apart. This is gonna happen. That's gonna happen. This. I'm like, no, no, Kempo's strong. But there's a lot of politics involved with it, and everybody wanted to go their own way, and that's good. It grew, and Ed Parker always said it was a progressive system, and it should change with the times. I don't know if he'd agree with what I do, but I think he would. Everybody that I pretty much have dealt with, they say, he was, like I said, Chuck Sullivan, when he met with them right before he passed away and took off to Hawaii, Chuck Sullivan had met with him and he said he was, changing the system. He had the 16 technique system in place, but he hadn't finished it. Somebody finished it up. I'm not sure who, but Chuck said he told him at that point that he was gonna do the 16 technique system, and in a few years, he was gonna minus some of that out. He was gonna break it down more so that it could be, back to a real quality, strong system, and there's a lot of very quality black belts out there. I'm not saying there isn't, it's just whether you're gonna put the time into it or not, you put the time into it, 24 techniques, I mean, you got an arsenal. I mean, it's huge, and then while he was coming up, I mean, we were changing. I mean, Ed Parker'd call up and or come down and he'd say, "Hey, we're adding, we're changing this technique, 5 swords. Now you're gonna go to a forward bow here instead of a twist stance or whatever it was." So, there was always things progressing that were happening. And Grandmaster Hebler told me back, him, Chuck, and all the guys when they were training, that the system wasn't just Ed Parker that created all the techniques, it was all of his black belts. When they used to have their Friday night class or the line or whatever, and they'd all get together and they would talk about the techniques and they'd create the techniques as they would go, and they'd pound them out on each other and see if they worked, and if they did, then they got put into the system. So, that's kinda where I'm at. My wife, I've been married a couple times. Karate's kind of not been great with Kempo, but, things happen, so, uh, I'm with my last and final one. She's awesome. She, actually took karate with me where my first wife didn't. She supported me doing it, but she didn't want any part of it. Second one got a little bit involved, and, that was just a disaster. But my wife now, she trained with me. She didn't actually her son was 3 years old, came in. I started a 3 and 4-year-old class, and, she brought him in to train, and he didn't really care for it much. He didn't stick with it, and then his sister came in, and she was older, and she stuck with it for quite a bit. I got her almost a brown belt, and then, Alba, my wife, came in, and they did this big thing. I think it was News 8, and, they did this huge everybody call in and say what number 1 school in San Diego is, and I won. That's when I had a lot of students. And, so I got number 1 for the year of being, top school in San Diego, and so News 8, News 10, I don't know which one it was. One of them, they came in and they actually, filmed me for free and gave me a video. I had it on my website for years, but I recently took it down because it was so outdated. And so I didn't have many adults because 9/11 really killed all my adults. I was teaching police officers because at Lemon Grove, that's all we did was we had a police um, program that we put together, and we were teaching a lot of police officers out of there, San Diego police sheriffs and Navy SEALs, taught almost everybody. And so the 9/11 hit, and I had more adults than I had kids. And our Tuesday night sparring class was just everybody came around, all from all around, just do the sparring class. And 9/11 hit, and adults are gone. Military's gone. Police are down to the airport. Had the chief of police that was training down there, and he was running everything down at the airport. But then a lot of the military people brought their kids in while they were gone. So we ended up growing our kids class. And then I got to the point where, man, I want to build my adult class back up. So when News 10 came in, I had more kids than I had adults. I only had I had more black belts probably than anything, instructors. I think I had 4 or 5 instructors, and then I had, um, maybe 5 or 6 adults. But like I said, I had like 166 students, so it was all mainly kids. So I asked Alba at the time, I said, "Hey, if I give you a uniform," she wasn't training. She trained when she was a kid in Mexico. But I said, "Hey, if I give you a uniform, I'll give you a free uniform and a free month if you jump in on this video so we can look like we got some adult students, you know?" And so she goes, "Yeah, I'll do it for you, no problem. I don't want anything." So she did. She came out and she did it, and she was on the video. And then the next day, she comes over and hands me the uniform, and she goes, "Thanks, but I really don't want to train, for my kids and this and that." And I had put together a kickboxing conditioning class, and we were kind of going at it pretty hard with the kickboxing class. And she came in and she goes, "You know what? Can I get that uniform back? I'd kind of like to do your kickboxing class. Would that be okay?" And I said, "Yeah, come in and do it. Try it out." And she did. And then she wanted to start training from me in Kempo. So then she started doing the Kempo. And now she's a fifth degree black belt under me, and going for her sixth in August. And she teaches the kids and the adults, mainly the kids down at the school. And phenomenal instructor. She enjoys it. And, she's bilingual. So, we got Spanish speaking, students that can come to her class, and it works out pretty good. And, but my heart and soul's into Kempo. It's like it'll never go away. I told her, I said, "I'll never retire." I'm working with her right now because when COVID hit, it really hit the school hard. We lost half of our students during that, and the owner that was at that school was really cool. So um, he actually cut my rent in half while we were going through COVID. So I was able to keep the school afloat, and we did online classes, and I learned a lot from that. Good thing I learned to do techniques right and left-sided, because when you're doing it online, it's about the only way everybody understands it is doing it that way. So we survived COVID, and the students that were there now are most of them are black belts now. They made it through, and um, I actually taught the two. I don't know if you ever learned the 2-man set, but I taught the 2-man set to 2 of my brown belts that were teenagers at the time. And they're not at each other's house, but they were friends. And I taught it to them online. And I thought, I don't know how this is going to come out when we get back in the school, because it's a 2-man set. You got 2 people there. They came back in, and it worked out really good. Within, I would say, about 3 weeks, they were nailing it. They had it. And I'm like, it worked. I taught one of the students Form 4 online, and, but the difference is, if you understand it, you got the basics, wasn't too much of a problem to teach online. And if you've got 2 people, then it works out pretty good. I've got husband and wife that I teach online on a regular basis, and they're really good at it. They can actually do stuff on each other, so, it's almost like being in a class. So,
Yeah, if you have that foundation, it's a lot easier to pick up the other items online, or in a video, in a remote way, versus just starting out fresh. Uh, that wouldn't be the recommended way of learning. But if you've already have that base, yeah, like online is totally doable. And yeah, the whole COVID and everything opened a lot of people's eyes to, oh yeah, we can do this stuff remotely. And so
yeah.
uh So it was
Yes, I've
a
been
good
able to.
learning experience, I think.
Yeah. The one person I had one guy come online and, it was impossible. He wasn't real coordinator or anything else, and trying to teach somebody, not that he couldn't learn, but in person, he would get it, but online, it was too difficult. So I just kinda cut that off. I'm like, "You really need to find a school close by and go in there and train from somebody there where you can do some hands-on stuff." And Grandmaster Hebler actually took me from, he promoted me to 8th, ninth degree black belt, and then I was acknowledged by my peers to Grandmaster back in, I think, 22. Actually, AC Rainey, Grandmaster Dave Prosser, he came down and God, Bob Austin, I think he's a professor up in Colorado. He's got huge school. I think he's kinda retired from the school part, but he's still part of his association, really good martial artist, and, uh, and they were all down there and acknowledged me, the Grandmaster, and Chuck Sullivan signed my certificate, and Joe Ribello and Ted Sumner, and I ended up at the Hall of Fame, and everybody's coming up 'cause, Paul Casey was gonna sign it, and while I had it out, Ted Sumner's like, "Hey, what is that?" And he's, "Hey, I wanna sign it," you know? So he signed it, and so I got quite a few acknowledgments on it, so it was pretty cool, and but it's not the end of the road, it's like black belt, I try to tell students the worst thing, and I talked to Ted Sumner about this at the Hall of Fame one day when we were talking, we were out having a couple drinks, and I said, "Have you ever had anybody make black belt and then drop out?" And he goes, "Oh my god, yeah, it's the worst thing." I said, "Oh my god, it took my heart away." I said, I promoted, I had a black belt test, quite a while ago, but I promoted, I think there was 5 or 6 that made black on that day, and they've been training for 5, 6 years, and I kinda had a feeling with one of them. It was a female. And so she came in right before the test, and she goes, "I wanna pay for my test, and I wanna fill out my cancellation form." I'm like, "What?"
Hmm.
And she goes, "Yeah." She goes, "My goal was black belt. I got it, and on to other things now." Like, wow, this is like the beginning of your journey. It's like a doctor that just graduated college. You haven't got hands-on yet really in there, doing surgery or anything, and then I had the other one, it was him and his son. His son dropped out right away. He was going to college, so it's kind of understandable, and he stayed for a while, but, work kinda took him away from it. But other than that, most of my black belts, I've got, I think, about 50 black belts on my family tree now, and they all fade in and out here and there, I got the core ones that stay with it, and a lot of them got older, guys that I sparred with that were 10 years older than me that back in the day, it's like, um, Rick Monjay, he was a big Rick. He's a tough fighter. Me and him, he was my sparring partner for a long time, and he was here in San Diego, and he's gotten older now, and I saw him at my Christmas party, and I go, "Man, I miss those days." And he goes, "Yeah, I can't do that stuff anymore." And it's really hard, you get to that point. He said, "We should come in and teach." Yeah, just because you can't do it anymore, you can still teach. Gotta pass that art on to everyone. To me, that's passing on your knowledge. That's the biggest part of the whole thing, and I love teaching. So, like I say, I'll never retire. I told Al, I said, "I'll always be doing Kempo." It's just gotta change the level, some things you can do and some things you can't. I mean, Dave Prosser used to go and just beat the crap out of each other, He's up in Gardnerville, Nevada. And that's a real funny story I'm gonna say real quick. When I met Dave Prosser, uh, he's a tough guy. He likes to get hit. You can hit him as hard as you want to, and he enjoys it. He'll smile. I hit him once where he didn't smile so much, but most times he's smiling. So he's when we first met, he goes, "You gotta come up to my school, Gardnerville, come up, we'll do some shooting. I got all these guns, and I live near the mountains, and he goes, 'Come into my school and spar.'" So I go there, and, at this time, Grandmaster Hebler had moved back to Gardnerville, Nevada. He always loved Gardnerville, Nevada, and so I'm visiting kind of the both of them, and so me and Dave tell him we're taking him back to his room, and we'd had lunch, and he goes, "Well, what are you guys gonna do?" And Dave goes, "Well, we're going back to my school. We're gonna spar," And Hebler goes, "No." And we're like, "What?" He goes, "No, I don't. You guys are both my friends and students." And he goes, "Dave's a Golden Glove fighter, and he's a kick-ass fighter." And he goes, "Gary's a brawler, a total street fighter." He goes, "The two of you guys fighting together is just not good." He goes, "It'll be bad. It'll be really bad." And he goes, "I want you guys to remain being friends." We're like, "No, we're good." And he's like, "No, no, you got to make me a promise. I'm not gonna go take my nap if you don't make me that promise." So we're like, "All right, yeah, we'll do that." So Dave gets out of the truck, I get back in, I jump in Prosser's truck, and he looks at me and he goes, "You ready?" And I said, "Yeah, I gotta stop by Walmart. I need a mouthpiece." So we went down there. I walked into his school, and I've never had a fear of fighting anybody. It's like no matter I don't care how big you are or whatever, it doesn't change anything. But I walked into his school and I look, and there's blood all over the mirrors, dried up
Mm.
blood. I mean, splattered everywhere. And it was a small school. And I'm like, "What's all this?" And he goes, "Oh, the other night we were sparring and one guy broke his nose and the other guy ruptured his spleen and had to go to the hospital." And I'm like, "Oh, maybe I picked the wrong guy to spar with. Maybe Epler had a point here." But yeah, I'm not gonna back down. So I go in the bathroom to change, and there's blood all over the sink and blood all over the mirror and blood all over the toilet. And I'm like, "Oh man, what did I get myself into?" And I went out there and we both squared off, and we both fought pretty close to the same. Dave's a hard hitter. I like hitting hard. We hit in the face. We hit everywhere. But the difference is he's a mile high. In San Diego, we're not a mile high. So my breathing was nothing like what Dave Prosser's was. So we go for about 2 minutes. I'm like, I'm running out of air. I said, "We got to take a break, because otherwise he's going to kill me." So we take a break and we went back in. We just kept going back in. I'd keep going. "Okay, I need air. I need air. I got to get some more. I need air." And we went for a couple hours at it, just pounding each other. And then we went back and got Hebler, and our faces all red and everything. He goes, "You guys sparred." And we're like, "Yeah." Well, that was great. Me and Dave, every time we go, we'll do workshops together. Me and him do seminars and workshops together, and we key off each other because if I get stuck on something, he keeps going. If he gets stuck, I keep going, and we try to keep it as lively as we can. The last one we did for Todd Durgan, AC Rainey was up there in the hallway, and we're getting ready for it. We were just beating the crap out of each other before we went in for the seminar. So, but it's fun. But that's old school. I like the old school training, but, can't do that anymore, as
Mm,
far as my
yeah.
school goes. Good control, and, I tell everybody, "Don't punch in the face. Nobody wants bloody nose and go home." It's like, not that accidents don't happen, but we try to control everything. But you were from San Diego too, right? So you started out here.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm from San Diego. As we talked about earlier, my first instructor was Sweet Pete Salas, and started in. I was at that school for I guess about 2 3 years. Just almost to my third brown when I left for the army, and didn't. Un- I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, I had about a 25 plus year gap in between Kempo schools. The instructor that I train with now um, is in the so with Mr. Salas. That I guess lineage is sort of that of the Tracy version, and the instructor that I train with now is the Ed Parker, American Kempo lineage. So when
Cool.
I started at this school, I had to start over again, which at first I was not a fan of, but I've come to learn and really appreciate that. So. Um, at this point, I'm working back to working towards my third brown. And then I also am cross training. So I recently started doing Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, and I'm also doing Hapkido as well.
Awesome.
And
It's freaking
uh, I also have a little bit of Taekwondo, and I did some boxing a little bit in the army, and then I guess my other core style is that of capoeira, and I've
nice.
been doing that for 17 years now. So I'm trying to stay well rounded, but there's only so many hours in the day that I can do all of these things. So
But it's in your
it's
blood, you know?
yeah. I
That's
mean,
the
I,
thing, you
I
stuck
I
with
love
it,
it.
you're still yeah.
I
Once
love
you
it.
start doing it, you either do it or you don't, it's like I hear people say they're gonna come back and then they never do,
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
hard for people to come back after they leave, so,
Yeah.
hats off to you, I'm glad you're sticking with it. Uh,
Yeah.
Out of all the systems I've tried probably 15, 16 different systems, and for me, the only thing that I found that really works in the street, that is American Kempo, it's up close and personal in the way attacks happen out on the street and mass attacks, because, um, the jujitsu, well, wasn't really for me because I don't like fighting on the ground, and I always stayed away from I actually I don't think I was ever in a street fight where I went to the ground. I always stayed on my feet, and I asked, Helson Gracie when I was doing randori with him one time, Grandmaster Helson Gracie, and I said, "What do you guys do if it's multiple attacks?" And he said, "Do Kempo. Why would you go to the ground if you can't fight more than one guy because if one guy's got you tied up, you got 2 or 3 guys kicking you." And on my second-degree black belt test, Darby had, uh, kinda entwined jujitsu with Kempo. So we were fighting and the thing was it was 2 on 1. So one of the guys had to take me to the ground. And I don't know how old I was then, 20, 26, 27, and, maybe 28. And so both guys I was fighting, one was 16 years old, and he came in from the kids class at 12 because he was so big and a really good fighter, Danny, and, another guy named Mike Kassab, and he was a really good fighter, and he was a couple years younger than me, and, but hardcore fighters. And so, we fought and then boom, they took me to ground and I kept fighting, but, Mike's on top of me, punching me in the face, and I get Danny kicking me in the ribs, and not super hard, but hard enough that it hurt. And so, I'm trying to get out of it and I'm trying to roll and I end up rolling on my stomach. Worst place to be, right? On your back. And so he's trying to get a chokehold on me. And Darby gets down on the floor and he gets right in my face and he's looking at me. He goes, "Gary, all you gotta do is stand up and it's all over. Just like I was just stand up and it's all over." And I'm just thinking, yeah, easy for you to say. This is like my 3rd or 4th fight for my second black, and I'm totally exhausted. And then I just jumped up and I threw the guys off of me. And I remember punching Mike in I think it was the forehead. I caught him and he backed up and Darby's like, "Break." And he goes, "See, that's all you had to do." And it's like, yeah, sounds easy, but it's not that easy. So stand-up fighting for me, that's my thing. But, I see, ground fighting, there's different aspects of every part of martial arts that's good, and being well-rounded, I think, is really well. So
Yeah, I'm all about cross training and having as many things in your toolbox as you can. Yeah, you're probably not going to use half of it, 75% of it, but having the option to use all of those things, I think is good and important, and I think it's important to be versed in all ranges of combat. And
exactly.
uh, there's all these debates about, oh, well, this is going to work and that's going to work, and we could do that all day. But I think it doesn't hurt to have options and
Yep.
various ways to deal with things. So
Yeah.
yeah, I
You
like
never know
having it
when
all.
you're gonna end up on the ground, so, ground training's good. And
Gotcha,
there's a
gotcha.
lot of Kempo that you can use on the ground if you think about it. 'Cause a lot of stand-up jujitsu we do that works.
Mhm.
I found that when I was doing it is, try some of your Kempo stuff when you're down on the ground. I did a MMA class for a while because MMA was getting so big. It was like, wow, I'm not getting any students. So I put together an MMA class and I changed it around. I made it more of a street fighting MMA. And a couple of the guys that trained with me, they're like, man, you got the most nasty jujitsu I've ever seen. Cause I was doing stuff like taking the middle knuckle, driving it into the ribs, vibrating punches. I take my thumb, wrap it around a rib. It's like, you can't do that stuff. I'm like, in the street, I can do anything I want. That's what you got to be aware
Exactly,
of.
exactly, exactly. So, uh, man, there's that's a good thing about talking Kempo is that we could do it all day long and
Sure.
all night long. And even though I have plenty of tape, we're gonna go ahead and move into our lightning round here as we head towards a wrap up, and then we'll talk about scheduling a part two because there are some items that I wanted to make sure that uh I cover, but we won't get to them this time, but we'll talk after this to schedule a part two and get to some of uh, those points. But
Sounds good.
as for the lightning round, just got a few little questions here to throw at you.
Sure.
First one being, do you have a favorite technique?
Favorite technique, probably snapping twig.
It's a good one. That one's brought up a lot. Many of the guests have picked that. So. That's a good one. I like it. I like it. Next question: do you have a favorite form and or set?
Form 4, Mr. Parker's signature form. I think it's now they're all good, but I think that one, it's so fluid and there's techniques in it, so I like all the movement that, you create in that one. It's generating a lot of power. As far
Very
as
nice.
sets, probably stance set. I've modified ours a little bit, but I like stance set. I think it
Yeah,
teaches
that one's
you a lot
brought
of the
up
movements.
quite a few times, as I recall. I can think of probably at least two or three of my previous guests have picked sets. Yeah, that's a good one. I like it. All right. Next question: do you have a favorite weapon?
Probably the knife because I think I really like to work on knife disarms. I think it's the one weapon that, a gun is very dangerous, but you know, the, um, if I can redirect it, that's all you got to do is that little movement to get it redirected. I mean, if you get shot, that's bad news, but with the knife, it's all over you. So, if you don't get it just right, and you don't have a hold of it, that knife can just be slicing you into pieces so easy. So I try to work the knife a lot, and I like the stick a lot too, but the stick and the knife to me, they both kind of work the same directions and the same movements as a stick is a knife. You train kind of the same way.
Very nice. I like it. I like it. All right. Next question: if there is anyone that you could train with, living or dead, uh, we're gonna stick to this. This question originally was one question, but I've now broken it up into two. So, any person, whether you've trained with them or not, and these are going to be non-fictional people. The second part of the question is just going to be fictional characters. But if there's anyone you could train with, living or dead, who would, besides Ed Parker, who would that be?
But besides Ed Parker, okay, that was gonna be my choice.
Yeah, I when I first started doing the show, I just opened it up to anybody and not really thinking about the fact that this is primarily a Kempo show. And so, yes, everyone is gonna say Ed Parker. So I figured I needed to challenge my guests a little bit and take Ed Parker off the table. So, yeah, anyone besides Ed Parker, because that's a given. Uh,
Okay,
who
well,
would that be?
Ed Parker, I would say Bruce Lee.
Very nice, very nice. Yes, he's often picked and rightly so. So I like it. I like it. Right. So then the second part of that question is a fictional character. Uh, if you could train with any fictional character, who would you like to train with?
Wow, I really don't know. Fictional, because it's not really reality. What do you
Well, I'm talking about, someone like, Mr. Miyagi, or I've had a Kung Fu Panda mentioned a few times. Uh,
okay.
you know.
Um, yeah, kind of, I would say Jackie Chan. I think I don't know, I like the way Jackie Chan moves as far as, he uses his environment with everything.
Mhm,
I
mhm.
wouldn't wanna do the stunts he does, but I think he can move really well. He's definitely a good martial artist.
All right, all right, very nice, very nice. All right, so now we are going to move to our shameless self promotion. So you can plug anything that you like, or if there's anything that you wanted to make sure that we get out that you haven't mentioned. Now's your time to throw that out there, and then we'll close out for part one, and we'll work on scheduling part two. So. Um,
So what do you mean by shameless promotions?
So, if you want to promote your school or website, or
Oh.
some of my previous guests have written books, or just anything that comes to your mind that you want to get out there for this episode, then
Sure.
yeah, throw it
Um,
out there.
yeah, I don't write books, but, um, my school, I welcome anybody to come in that wants to come in and train. American Family Kempo Karate. We're in Spring Valley, California, in, actually an area called Casadero. It's close to La Mesa. And it's not a real big school, but, yeah, we enjoy, teaching anyone that wants to learn. Yeah, I have had students I've turned away that, I didn't feel, they wanted to even be there, that might be harmful to the school, I should say. You have some
Hmm.
students come in that just they don't really wanna be there, but they come there anyhow. It's like, "Why are you here?" You know? Go somewhere else, find out what fits you. If anybody's interested in stand-up, self-defense, that's my goal, that's what I enjoy teaching. And I do private lessons also, and I do them online too. So, I do like a group of lessons. I usually put a group of lessons for like $300 for 10 lessons, um, and we can do it online or we can do it in person, whatever works. Online, I always recommend that someone has somebody with them so they can work with them. But a beginner, intermediate, advanced, want to work on movement, whatever it happens to be. Like I said, I'm a real stickler for the basics and making sure that your movement's good and that your position's good and you understand the technique. Because if you don't understand the technique and how the body moves, you're not going to be able to do the technique properly. So, like I say, we don't do as many techniques, but it's not like I give belts away either. It still takes somebody, you figure 4 forms, 46 techniques, and the basics and the sets. On the average, it still takes somebody about 4 years to make black belt if they're putting quite a bit into it. But not, it took me 7 years. Actually, I was ready at 6 years. I had my material, but Ed Parker passed away, right before, and I don't know what happened, but I kind of I continued to teach, I continued to train, but I didn't test. And Darby asked me, he's like, "Hey, you need to test for your black." And I'm like, I just my heart wasn't into the testing part of it at that point. It's funny because and he had told me this because we had a conversation, and I said, "Well, Ed Parker's not alive anymore." He said, "Well, Ed Parker's not your instructor anyways," which he wasn't. It was Darby. Darby trained from Ed Parker, not me. So, I'm like, "Oh, you're right, I need to kinda open my eyes and kick my ass in gear and test for it." Um,
Very nice, very nice. All right. Well, that is going to we're going to close out for this part today. I thank you so much for taking the time to share your story, and yeah, there's always with every guest, there's always so much that I want to get into, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, I
we'll
appreciate you
definitely
having me on.
definitely have you for part two, so we can get a little deeper dive into some of the things that you brought up. But yeah, I just can't thank you again, and thank you enough, I should say. And um, yeah, thank you so much, and we'll close out,
Sounds good.
I can't wait to get this out for everyone here. So thank you.
All right. Thank you. Big salute to you.
Thank you for listening to My Empty Hands. If you enjoyed the show, please share it with a friend. If you didn't enjoy it, please share it with an enemy. If you'd like to be a guest, or if you would like to recommend a guest for the show, please email me at podcast@talkingkempo.com. Thank you.